At least 10% of all insect species in the world are at risk of extinction, and that's a conservative estimate. A nature reserve in Germany found that a staggering 75% of flying insects have vanished in just the last 25 years. Most of this can be attributed to corporate farming practices. Now, on one hand, this is great because I have no sympathy for those little flying demons, but on the other hand, this is all very unsettling because insects are essential to agriculture in so many ways, including pollination and soil fertilization. Like everything else in nature, this relationship is reciprocal and cyclical. Let's expand on that by introducing a concept that we'll call the balance. Now, you may be asking yourself what in the heck any of this has to do with the title of the video. Well, this goes a lot deeper than you might think, and it requires me to build some substantial foundational context. So let's not waste any more time and hop right into it. What exactly do I mean when I say the balance? In short, it's a law of life in the universe. The plants grow, they thrive from the nutrients in the soil, they clean the air and produce oxygen. Life receives air. The bugs and herbivores thrive from the plants, the birds thrive from the bugs, the predators thrive from the herbivores, the fungi, microbes, and bugs thrive from the feces, then they convert the feces and dead organisms into usable nutrients, and so the soil thrives, and the plants thrive from the nutrients in the soil again. It's all complexly interconnected. If you take out any one aspect or add one that doesn't belong, the system crumbles. These relationships were formed over billions of years to reach a point of perfect harmony for life to flourish as it has. If there are too many bugs, the bird population thrives. But the bug population can't keep up with all these new birds, so the birds die off and the bugs thrive again. And the cycle repeats until a point of stability or equilibrium is reached. This is the moment when an ecosystem reaches its ideal state. Where there is balance, there is also prosperity. What other relationships have to balance to create prosperity? The whole body is an ecosystem made up of different ecosystems that all have to balance within and between themselves. In fact, there are about 3 times more bacteria in our body than there are human cells, most of which are vital to our function. If any one aspect at any scale is out of balance, you get illness or dysfunction, either mental or physical. If one organ fails, the whole system fails. If one cell fails spectacularly, it becomes a cancer and brings the whole body down with it. Once again, it's all complexly interconnected. Every variable is crucial to the whole, and with balance comes prosperity. Zooming back out from humans, the ecosystems of Earth have to balance between each other as well, usually in ways that are much harder to measure. For example, regular migration cycles. Or how about the fact that the Amazon produces enough humidity to seed rain clouds that travel across oceans and continents? Now the question is, can we zoom out even further? You may have heard of a scientific concept called the Goldilocks zone, which is a range of distance from a planet's star that would allow life to occur. We know of many planets in our galaxy alone that exist within this zone, so why haven't we been able to discover any sort of extraterrestrial life? Well, that's because this is a dramatically simplistic characterization. The Goldilocks zone simply describes the range that would keep water liquid on the planet, but doesn't take into consideration other factors that would make the planet's conditions far too extreme. We can observe water on other planets and moons, but Earth is the only one with stable and consistent bodies of water on its surface. This is because there are many variables of balance on a cosmic level that we take for granted. If the balance between the Earth and the Moon's gravity was different, life as we know it may not exist. The same can be said about the relationship between our distance from the Sun and how quickly the Earth rotates, or the gravity of the Sun and the speed that the Earth orbits. What happens when we forcefully introduce imbalance to this system of divine balance, so to speak? Well, we don't have to theory craft. We can actually observe this when we introduce an invasive species into an ecosystem. That animal doesn't have an established reciprocal relationship with the ecosystem, and one of 2 things happens. 1, the species dies because the ecosystem has nothing to offer them, or 2, the species ends up absolutely ravaging the ecosystem. Why? The invasive species takes and does not offer anything in return, so the scales tip and the balance is defiled. In the end, however, on a grander scale, the balance always finds a way to restore itself, one way or another. Eventually, the resources of that ecosystem are depleted and the invasive species dies off along with everything else that it killed. And then the cycle restarts, building from the ground up if it has to, so that the next generation of that ecosystem might figure it out. You can see that there's many observable and necessary layers of balance, and I'm certain that there are many more that go far beyond our perception. This balance of ecosystems can be visualized like a fractal. Layer after layer of variables all balancing within and between themselves at every scale. Variables at the lowest level affect every higher level variable, and higher level variables in turn affect everything under their umbrella. Think the butterfly effect, how one small, seemingly insignificant act can have immeasurably large consequences. All this is to stress that for us to simply be alive in this moment requires a seemingly infinite number of variables to coherently and comprehensively balance within and between themselves at every level, continuously, over the span of billions of years. Well, so what? I mean, think about it. This is a real photo of our nearest galaxy. These big stars you see are actually the stars in our galaxy. See this glow? It's not actually a glow. Those are all stars. And they look so small from here that it looks like fog to us. That's messed up. This is what 100 million pennies looks like. There's hundreds of billions of stars in each galaxy, so get a couple thousand of these and you'll get the number of stars in a single galaxy. Well, there's probably about 10 trillion galaxies in the universe. To put that into perspective, you would need 1 million people each with $1 million to get $1 trillion. So do that 10 times over and you'll get $1 for each galaxy in the universe. Now, remember that a single dollar bill represents thousands of pools of pennies, and each penny represents a single star. Considering the sheer vastness of the universe, this was just a happy accident. This accidental alignment of variables is bound to happen by chance eventually, right? Sure, you could say that, but not only does this answer suck, it's completely irrelevant because it ignores one simple question. Why? There are so many cohesively balanced rules and laws that create reality as it is, but why? Why does the universe even have order? Why isn't it pure chaos? We haven't even begun to consider where the hell the first living organisms came from. Now ask yourself why life only appears to manifest when this ridiculous standard of balance is met. I stated earlier that where there is balance, there is also prosperity. Why is that true? Why isn't the universe teeming with observable life? You can see that through a purely scientific lens, existence makes absolutely no sense. There's no reason why life should exist, let alone reality. Yet it does. Even if it's the case that this universe is one universe of an infinite multiverse that accidentally perfected the alignment of physical laws, what the hell drives that existence in the first place? Why is it anything at all? Why isn't it just nothingness? All things considered, the odds of conscious life developing by pure coincidence from absolutely nothing are, well, exactly zero. It is only able to exist because of this presupposed point of origin, this force of balance that defines our reality, this unspoken law of nature that seems to suggest that the universe itself is a living organism or some sort of ecosystem, and it's conspiring to create the conscious experience. This original force is a massive intellectual gap in our understanding of existence that science has not and cannot explain, because it precedes science. It precedes understanding. Science just accepts this fact as a given and only aims to understand everything that comes after it. It seems impossible to comprehend, yet we know it exists. So understandably, we tuck it away in the closet of our brains and allow the distractions and mundanities of everyday life to keep us from thinking of it. Well, it wasn't always that way. Humanity has already made extensive efforts to understand this force through observation. I know this because this idea of the balance is the very same force that we humans try to describe in religion. God, Allah, Brahman, the Hermetic principles, karma, yin and yang, the collective unconscious, equivalent exchange, the force from Star Wars. Pick one out of a hat, it doesn't matter. It all describes the same damn thing. The invisible, unspoken, inconceivable force of balance that seems to exist in every fabric and at every level of reality and thrusts life into existence. And if you pay attention, religious scriptures are already telling us how to maintain the balance. The Jewish religion commands a sabbatical year to allow agricultural land to heal from human intervention. Islam commands charity so that economic balance is maintained within communities. The Christian religion warns of 7 deadly sins, 7 sins that are at an all-time high now more than ever. Sins that are obviously responsible for the overall turbulent state of the world. A lot of it stems from the fact that the people in power ask themselves, is this good for humanity? To which the answer is, of course not, but that doesn't matter because it's profitable. If you really take time to notice it, you'll see that sins are, by definition, simply actions that upset the balance. This is why it is said that God is within us all, because balance is pervasive through everything in reality. There is no escape. Every action is always accounted for. The balance can nurture us and allow us to thrive. But if we take it for granted and act with impunity, it will mean our demise. In other words, it is all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful, and all-loving, yet it is vengeful and vindictive. And that's exactly how God is described. Normally it sounds like a self-contradiction, but in the context of balance, it makes perfect sense. Our fate isn't in the hands of some all-powerful, toga-wearing giga-chad in the clouds. Our fate is determined by our actions, because ultimately we have control over nothing except how we act. Accountability is infectious. People are far more likely to litter if they see someone else litter. But they're also far more likely to pick up after themselves if they see others do the same. Yes, one cancer cell has the potential to bring down the entire body. But the thing we don't ever draw attention to is those killer T cells that clock in every goddamn day to exterminate the cancer. We take that necessary effort for granted. Yeah, sometimes they mess up and they don't do their jobs right, but if those killer T cells sat their asses in bed all day feeling sorry for themselves, then cancer would have free reign to wreak havoc and all the other cells will die before they've had a chance to fulfill their purpose. The thing about the 7 deadly sins is that they present themselves as the path of least resistance. To a human cell, it's far easier to single-handedly destroy the body than save it. Cancer cells are simply cells that continue to divide, refuse to die, and do so at the expense of the body. Just as well, it's easier to farm destructively than farm sustainably. It's easier to ravage our ecosystem than maintain its balance. It's easier to cut a weed at the stem than dig it out from its roots. But after all is said and done, we have to ask ourselves this. Is this profitable? Of course not, but that doesn't matter because it's good for humanity. But perhaps you believe that humanity, existence, and the universe itself doesn't actually matter, in which case neither do your actions. Logically, you're actually absolutely right. There's no real point to all this. Why protect this twisted mess of a playground that nobody even asked for in the first place? It's all an exercise in vanity. Logically, you're right. But we're not creatures of pure logic, are we? The point of a playground is not to figure out the meaning of the playground. The point of a playground is to play. And I'll tell you one game we can play that always matters. No matter who you are, where you are, how you feel, or what you've been through, there's one constant in life that always matters. Call it cringe, call it corny, minimize it all you want, but deep down, when you let yourself feel it, I think you know it's true. Can you guess what it is? If there's even one game worth playing on this playground, one thing that truly matters, just one, then all of it matters. So let's make sure we don't break the place, and let's clean it up before we go so that the people that visit tomorrow can use it after we're finished.